Hi there, this is Trent Price from T-rizzle's Variety Hour. You're listening to my interview with singer-songwriter Carl Jackson. The interview was originally recorded January 6, 2020, at the Station Inn in Nashville, Tennessee. I aired the interview February 12, 2020. I hope you enjoy the interview. Hello everyone, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee with singer-songwriter, producer, instrumentalist, and overall legend, Carl Jackson. Thank you for being here, Carl.
Well, I appreciate that. I don't know how much I gotta give you for all that there.
So I wanted to just talk a little bit about your background. You're from Mississippi originally, right?
I'm from Louisville, Mississippi. It's a little town about 90 miles north of Jackson, down in Mississippi. Always be home. Yeah.
You started in music pretty early, right?
I did. I started playing banjo when I was about 8 years old, I guess, is when I first picked it up, started learning. I actually went on the road with Jim and Jesse when I was 14, and one thing led to another.
Yeah.
Next thing I know, I'm out in California working with Glenn Campbell, and there were some things in between, too. You know, I worked with the Sullivan family for a while, and then Keith Whitley and Jimmy Goodrow, Bill Rollins and I started the original country store in its original version. Lasted about a week, and then I ran into Glenn Campbell and got taken off to California.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you first met Jim and Jesse?
Yeah, they were playing in a little schoolhouse down in Mississippi. I want to say it was Reform, Mississippi. I know we saw them twice down there. We saw them in Reform and also in a little town called Zama, Mississippi, and I believe the first time was in Reform. It was just a little country schoolhouse, and they were playing, and Daddy just insisted that we go, and that I go. It was on a Saturday night, I remember, and Ole Miss was playing football, and I did not want to go. I wanted to stay home and listen to the ball game, and he insisted I go, and when I did, obviously I was happy that I did, and we took my banjo along with me. It was there wasn't a whole lot of security at the Jim and Jesse show back then, you know. Yeah. So we just walked backstage and just said hello to them, you know. And Daddy told them I played, you know, and they actually brought me out on stage and let me play a tune or two with them. And then afterwards, you know, Daddy told them if they ever needed a banjo player to please keep us in mind, you know. And I was probably about 12. That night, I'm guessing a little bit. It's been a long time ago.
Yeah.
But when I was 14 or so, Jim called and said, "Hey man, did you mean that?
Yeah.
Can your boy go out on the road with us?" And my folks were great. They let me do it. And of course, Jim and Jesse were just wonderful people. Couldn't have gone with nicer folks, you know. And they were such a great influence on me, and I had a wonderful time.
I've got a couple of songs from the We Like Trains album.
Oh yeah,
to play. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that was your first album with them?
That was the first album that I played with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sure did. I was thrilled to do it. I remember Glenn Sutton was the producer, and he and I became great friends later on. He wrote Almost Persuaded and, oh gosh, a lot of what made Milwaukee famous has made a fool out of me. A lot of big hits in the country world, and he produced Rose Garden on his wife Lynn Anderson.
Yeah.
We became friends much later. That was one of my first big experiences in the studio. You know, playing banjo on somebody else's record. You know, it's pretty cool.
Was that Doug Jernigan playing the steel?
I believe it was. Yeah.
Probably one of the only bluegrass bands to have steel at that time.
At that time, yeah, they went through a little spell there where they kind of hit the country charts. They had a song called Diesel on My Tail.
Oh yeah.
They had a song called Thunder Road also. A couple of things that charted pretty well in the country field, and they started carrying a steel on the road with them, and it was Doug Jernigan. It's amazing that we're still working together down here at the Station Inn now. It's just he's a wonderful player. He had a big influence on me, you know. I mean, he played a lot of things on steel guitar that you're not supposed to play on steel guitar, you know, which kind of led me to play a few things on banjo that you really, at the time at least, it wasn't very common to play on banjo, you know. And I kind of give Doug a lot of credit for that. I mean, he's the first guy I heard play Orange Blossom Special on a stringed instrument like that, you know, rather than a fiddle.
Right, yeah.
You know, and so I thought, well, I'll learn this on banjo. And so I kind of give him a lot of credit for a few things that happened over the years.
Would you tell me a little bit about how you come to go with the Sullivan family?
Sullivan family was right after I left Jim and Jesse. I had an opportunity to go and work with the Sullivan family, play guitar with them, played a little banjo, but Emmett Sullivan was the banjo player in the group. He was a brother, he and Enoch. and Miss Enoch was married to Miss Margie, and so I played guitar most of the time, and I stayed with them, I guess, about a year or so, traveling around. Some of the most fun ever.
Yeah.
You know, especially when Marty came along and joined. Marty Stewart came along and joined the band. You know, and I already knew Marty. We gotten to know each other down, and he was from Philadelphia, Mississippi, and I was from Louisville, and we became friends. We'd hang out and play with a little group called the Page Family, my dad and I. And remember the first time I saw Marty, he came over to their house.
Yeah.
He was just a kid. He's about 5 years younger than I am, and he wanted to learn. Boy, he was eat up with it. He just wanted to learn to play, you know. And so we wound up being in the Sullivan family together, and man, we laughed. We had so much fun out on the road. That was some of the most fun days of my life.
Yeah.
Really, we probably did more laughing then than all the rest of it combined. You know, it was fun time.
Well, after that, as you were talking about, you kind of started the Country Store Band.
Yeah.
With a couple of your friends.
Yeah, Jimmy Goodrow, Keith Whitley, and I. We talked a lot. You know, Jimmy, of course, was with the Country Gentleman, and Keith with Ralph, and me with Jim and Jesse. You know, we became friends on the festival circuit. You know, and we just kind of threw the idea around, talked about it at some point, maybe forming a band together. And everything just kind of fell into place, and it was the right time. You know, we decided that's what we wanted to do. So we all met up in Columbus, Ohio, along with Bill Rollins. He also came down from wherever Bill was living at the time. I can't remember, but we all gathered up in Columbus, Ohio, and formed the Country Store. And we went out and I think we played one little show there in Columbus, and we went into Rome Studios and turned the tape machine on. And we did 5 or 6 songs just direct to tape, you know. And then Keith and I saw in the paper that Glenn Campbell was going to be in town, and we went to see him, and the rest is history there.
I guess meeting Glenn that night really kick-started everything, didn't it?
Well, it made you know, I have to give a lot of credit for the kickstart to my dad, obviously, and Jim and Jesse goes back that far. You know, my dad and my uncles had a little band back in Mississippi that I actually first played with, so my dad was a huge influence on me, and Jim and Jesse, the Sullivans, all along. But at that point, then that's when things really took off, when I got to meet Glenn Campbell. You know, I ran into Larry McNeely backstage at the Ohio State Fair, and Keith and I had gone to see the show, and we were headed back to our car, and we saw Larry standing over there, so I went over to talk to him, and we knew each other, but we had never met. And I just stuck out my hand and said, "Hey, man, I'm Carl Jackson. I really enjoyed the show." And he's like, "Carl Jackson, what are you doing here?" And I told him the whole story, you know. And, you know, he had been with Roy Acuff before Glenn. And I, of course, been with Jim and Jesse. So we knew of each other, but we'd never sat down and played together or anything. I had never met before. And he said, "Why don't you come by tomorrow and let's do some picking?" I still had no idea, you know, what he had in mind or if he had anything in mind at that time.
Yeah.
I said, "Sure." So I came by the next day, and, you know, he keeps asking me to, we're jamming back and forth a little bit, and he keeps asking me to play certain things, you know, and can you play this, and can you play that, and do you play guitar, and all these questions. I really know what's going on. It kind of turned out to be it was a kind of a job interview, you know, and next thing I know, he looks over at me and he goes, "Man, would you like to have this job?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, you know." And man, seriously, my classmates, 5 or 6 different ones had signed my yearbook. See young Glenn Campbell one day, you know, because the Good Time Hour was huge,
right?
And that show was so popular in Mississippi, so all my classmates had seen John Hartford and Larry McNeely on that show, and they just took for granted since I played banjo that's where I was going to be. And I'm like, "Oh, you're crazy." I never had any idea that I'd even meet the guy. But Larry, he said, "Give me a few minutes," and Larry left the room, and he came back a few minutes later and said, "Come with me." And we walked over to the next trailer over. Yeah. Well, that was the dressing rooms at the Ohio State Fair, and there was Glenn Campbell. And he put me through the same routine, same hoops, you know. Can you play this? Can you play that? And do you play guitar? And I remember specifically he asked me if I could play the claw on the guitar. And I said, "Yeah, I can," you know. And he said, "Well, play it for me." And that was that song. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a Jerry Reed tune. pretty dang difficult to play. It's really difficult to play, as a matter of fact. And I could play it really good back then. I don't know how well I could do right now, but anyway, he said play it for me. So I played it for him, and the next thing he asked me, he looked over and he said, "How much would you like to make?" And at 18 years old, I went, $1 million. $1 million, you know.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. And he laughs and he says, "Well, you go home and get your stuff together. You got the job." That's the way it worked, you know. And so I went on. The next thing I know, I'm on the road with Glenn. Really, the first main trip we took was to Australia.
Wow.
So it was a big jump, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And I always give Glenn credit. He made such a difference in my life. He featured me on every show that we ever played. In the 12 years I was with him on the road, he featured me every show. He would actually leave the stage, bring me out, and I'd do 2 or 3 things, and he'd come back out and we'd do some things together. He made me he was Glenn's family, you know.
Right.
He's family.
How much credit would you give Glenn as to influencing your career overall?
Oh gosh, I think tremendously. You know, he had such a major influence on a lot of other areas that I hadn't, you know, gone into that much. I mean, I was a banjo player, you know. I mean, I played guitar, obviously, and I played a lot of guitar. I played a lot of his stuff. I knew pretty much everything he'd ever played because I just loved what he did. Yeah. But I really wasn't known as anything but a banjo player, you know.
Right.
And I wasn't, you know, I wasn't known as a tenor singer, you know. I mean, I was the baritone singer in the country store, you know. Jimmy was singing tenor, you know. I remember one day Jimmy we were talking about some note on something or whatever, and we were talking about how high it was or whatever, you know, and he was talking, "Man, that's really high," you know, and I was like, "Oh man, that's not that high. I can hit that." He's like, "No, you can't," you know, and I just did it in natural voice. And he's like, "Holy cow, man," you know. But I never sang any tenor or anything like that before. So when I go to Glenn, then you talk about the influence he had on me, you know, suddenly I'm singing all the tenor parts with Glenn. You know, I'm singing everything above him, and he sings pretty dang high himself.
Right.
So it really did a lot to develop my voice, and especially the range of my voice. He also made a big difference in my songwriting career because he paid attention to things I wrote. You know, I finally got nerve to play him some things that I'd written, and he's like, "Man, these are good. I love these, you know, let's do a record, you know, let's, you know, and sign me to a publishing deal, all those things. He made a huge difference in my life. And of course I played a lot more things, you know. I mean, I even played a little fiddle and stuff in the show. I'm not a good fiddle player at all, you know, but I played enough to fool the folks on Orange Blossom Special and stuff like that, you know, or a few things that we needed for the show. Played mandolin. I even played dobro on one of his records.
Oh,
you know? Yeah. There was a song he did, a Neil Diamond song called Sunflower, and I played the dobro on it, you know, which I never played dobro, but you know. So Glenn had a big influence in a lot of ways. He gave me a lot of confidence. He showed me a lot about how to deal with people, how to be good to people, you know. I mean, I feel like I was good to people already. My mom and dad showed me that, but Glenn he had so much patience with folks. He was so kind, generous. I just can never say enough good things about him. He made a big difference in my life.
My next question was actually, Glenn recorded one of your songs called Letter to Home.
He did.
Would you kind of credit that to, I guess, getting your foot in the door to songwriting?
Very much so. Very much so. Glenn, I had you know, maybe a couple of other things recorded. I think the first outside artist that I had to record something, strangely enough, I believe was a song called A Far Cry From Over, and it was recorded by Mel Tillis and Nancy Sinatra, if you can imagine that. But when Glenn cut Letter to Home, it became a top 10 country record. You know, on the country charts, it became a hit record. Yeah. You know, and it did. It opened a lot of doors, and all of a sudden you got people listening to songs with different ears. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like you play them the same song you played them 3 or 4 months ago, but now they're actually listening to it because, wait a minute, this guy's got a hit, you know? And so once again, Glenn steps up to the plate and makes a huge difference in my life. Right. And he recorded several of my things over the years, but that was the biggest hit, you know. And then on the Adios album, and then much later on, you know, right before Glenn passed, he recorded Arkansas Farm Boy, and it was nominated for a Grammy. Yeah. So he just, again, everything Glenn touched to do with me made a big difference in my life. He really did make a difference.
Would you mind telling me the story behind the Arkansas Farm Boy song?
Not at all. Glenn had told me that story. I mean, he had told me how his granddaddy taught him In the Pines on a $5 guitar, you know. And I just thought that was so cool to think about. There's a guy with just multi-millions of dollars, just a superstar all over the world, and that's the way it started, you know. And so I got the idea for the song with him telling me that story, but the title popped in my head, if I remember correctly, on an airplane on the way to Australia. And I pretty much wrote the song on the plane, and then and then played it for Glenn, a few weeks later or whatever. And we actually cut it back then. We cut a demo on it, and I remember I kind of produced the demo and had Emmy Lou sing the harmony on it with us, but it was never released. It was never done. So until Adios, then all the years later, was the first time that it was ever released.
Yeah.
And I was so proud of that, because Glenn had Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
And Glenn couldn't remember the lyrics to Wichita Lineman. I mean, literally, except certain things he could. I mean, he parts of things, obviously, courses pretty much because he'd done them so much. But he remembered about as much of Arkansas Farm Boy as he did of those other songs, which was amazing to me, because he had never. He hadn't recorded it in all those years since we'd done the demo, but he loved that song so much. He was so proud of it, and man, he sung the fire out of it on the record, So there he goes again. He continues right on through having Alzheimer's, and even his passing, he still has an influence on me.
So you mentioned the album Adios, one of the many records you've produced.
Right.
But would you tell me a little bit more about that album?
Oh, that was kind of a dream come true for me. I mean, I had always wanted to do an album on Glenn, and to be able to get to do his last studio album, where I wanted people to. It's hard to find somebody that doesn't know who Glenn Campbell is, but at the same time, you got a younger generation and people coming along. I wanted them to know about this guy. I wanted to do something so pure that just kind of focused on his voice, real simple, not overproduced or anything.
Yeah.
Picked great songs, and man, he came through with flying colors.
Yeah.
And a lot of people thought it was really hard to do. It wasn't hard to do. I mean, Glenn had Alzheimer's. I had to type out the lyrics in big print.
Yeah.
Sometimes we had to do a lot of it one line at a time, because he could not remember lyrics, but he did not forget melodies. And he still sang right on pitch, and he sang great, and it was a joy. We laughed way more than we cried. It was just something I'll always cherish is doing that album for him.
Going back a little bit, after you left Glenn Campbell, what year was that you left?
1984.
And after you left, you had a little bit of a solo career, right?
I did. I got a record deal on Columbia Records at the time, and I had a song out called "She's Gone, Gone, Gone," which was an old song. Lefty Frizzell had recorded it originally. Harlan Howard wrote the song, and I had heard Keith do it. Keith had done it with J.D. Crowe, and I loved the tune, and I got that record deal, had a chance to record it, and did it, real country. Remember, I had Ray Flack come in and play guitar on it, had a little bit of Skag style, and and it actually was a big hit on about 90 of the 120 reporting stations.
Yeah.
There were about 30 stations that wouldn't play it because it was too country. They said, but it got up to about 40 or so in the nation, and it was pretty neat to all of a sudden turn on the radio, especially around here in Nashville, and hear that song all the time. And then I had a song called Dixie Train that also got in the 40s. It did pretty well, but I never broke out as a solo artist on a major label, anything like that, above that. But I kind of asked off myself, it was like I didn't want to do new country.
Right.
I wanted to do hardcore country music, or bluegrass country music. I wanted to do the real thing, and around that time it was starting to shift away from Ricky and Randy Travis and all that good stuff, and starting to go toward where we are today.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like I'd rather not have a hit if I got to have a hit on that.
Right. I wanted to talk now a little bit about some of the songs you've written.
Sure.
Who were your biggest influences, like as a songwriter?
Man, it's probably going to surprise you. But my biggest influences as a songwriter at the time, now, you got to understand, this is before I met Jim Rushing and Larry Cordell and Jerry Salley and those guys.
Yeah.
Okay, but at the time, and just listening to people, my biggest influences, believe it or not, were probably Elton John and Bernie Taupin.
Oh yeah.
I loved those Elton John records, man. And those guys, those songs were just amazing. I loved the Eagles. I loved tons of those songs. I mean, of course, there were all kinds of country and bluegrass songs that I loved too. So I was influenced by a lot of writers.
Yeah.
But as far as what I was listening to, I was listening to a lot of that. And I was listening to a lot of Jimmy Webb. Made a huge influence on me. Obviously, he wrote so many of those songs for Glenn.
Yeah.
And I recognized what an incredible talent he was. I just started writing. I'd written a few little things with lyrics when I was a kid, but never really done much with it. And then all of a sudden after I got with Glenn, I started getting serious about it. And then after moving back to Nashville in 1984, leaving Glenn, going on my own, getting a publishing deal here and stuff, I met Jim Rushing and Cordell and Jerry Salley. We started collaborating and stuff. And since that time, Jim Rushing has been the biggest influence on both me, Larry, and Jerry. I mean, he's a master. He's taught me a lot. I'll always cherish that from him. He's our mentor. I mean, he's just. He knows how to write the 3-minute movie probably better than anybody I've ever seen, you know, and he tells me I'm pretty good at it, so it makes me feel good,
Yeah, right. A good example of that 3-minute movie is a song you wrote with Jim, "The Ghost of a Chance."
Oh, I'm proud of that song so much. I had the title, and Jim and I got together and wrote it, and like I say, writing with Jim, he's a lot like me. I mean, he's a perfectionist. He wants it just right. I mean, it's not done until it's done. If we don't finish it that day, we don't finish it that day.
Yeah.
I think we wrote Ghost of a Chance in one sitting, if I remember right. But it's just, Jim looks at songwriting. It's really important. And until all the colors are finished on the board there, it's just it's not finished. You got to get it right, and that's one of the things Jim taught me, and I do feel like that's a 3-minute movie that I'm very proud of. And man, I love to hear Val Story sing it. I love to hear Rhonda Vincent sing it. She did a great record on it. I did a record on Sean King on it. It's a beautiful song. I'm really proud of it. Really proud of it.
You also wrote a bluegrass hit by Third Time Out. They Race the Miles.
I Race the Miles. I wrote that by myself. And I wrote that now before I met these guys. I wrote that out on the road with Glenn. I was dating Miss North Carolina at the time, a lady named Lynn Williford, will always be so dear to me, such a special person. I was missing her, and I remember we were in somewhere, I want to say up in Pennsylvania, I believe, and then we had to go. And then we were leaving for Las Vegas. Thus, the city of sin. That's where we were headed. And I just wrote the song. It was a true story. Because I was wanting to erase those miles and see her. Very much. At Third Time Out, they tell me that's still their most requested song, and that's really an honor. For them to have recorded that over 30 years ago. And it's still their most requested song. It means a lot.
That's actually on the album I brought for you to sign today, the Song of the South album.
Song of the South album, That was fun. I recorded that with Emmy Lou, and my version's a little bit different feel and stuff, how I originally wrote it, but I love their version of it too. And that was a big thrill recording the song with Emmy too, I'm proud of that one. That makes me smile when I hear people do it. I hear Colonel Isaac Moore, he comes down here at the station inn with me a lot of times, and man, he's singing the fire out of it. And it's just, and every time I see Russell and those guys, they always do it for me, and it's really proud of that song.
So you also wrote a big hit called Little Mountain Church House.
Little Mountain Church House. The story behind that one then was Ricky Skaggs was he was going to produce an album on Dolly Parton. I was writing for Ricky's company at the time. Both me, Larry Cordell, and Jim Rushing, we were all three writing for Ricky's company. And Ricky called me and he said, hey man, how about writing me a gospel song for Dolly, And so I started that song. Had a little bit of it, part of it or whatever, a chorus or part of the chorus or something. And Jim Rushing, he had an accident on a lawnmower. He almost cut his toe off, and so he was in the hospital up in Gallatin, Tennessee, and so I went to see him in there in the hospital room. I told him about that song and that I had the idea for this song, and that Ricky had asked me for something, and he liked the idea, and so we decided to finish it together.
Yeah,
and we did. Ricky liked it a lot. He liked it so much he didn't cut it on Dolly. He cut it on himself and the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. It was on the Will the Circle Be Unbroken 2 album. And then Doyle recorded it, and it became the first IBMA Song of the Year. That's been a good one. That song's been recorded at least 120 times.
Wow.
By different artists, so that's pretty cool. Kind of a bluegrass standard,
Yeah.
It makes me feel really good.
So there's actually a documentary coming out about you.
There is a documentary coming out. That was a big shocker.
Yeah.
It's like these wonderful folks from Mississippi at Mississippi Public Broadcasting. They called me up and asked me if they could do a film documentary on me, and I'm like, yeah, why? Thank you, but why? But they seem to think that it was something they wanted to do, and I'm so honored.
Yeah.
I am particularly honored by all the people that agreed to be interviewed for it. John Gibson is the producer of it, and he told me that literally everybody he had asked had said yes, and that just means the world to me.
Right.
Few little known people like Dolly and Linda Ronstadt and Emmy Lou and people like that. He was like, well, that's pretty neat.
Yeah,
they want to.
Yeah, a lot of compliments.
I hope they said. Well, I don't know. I hadn't seen it yet. I hope they said good things.
Yeah.
I've got good things to say about them. I know that.
Let's see. So I think that's coming out January 2020, right?
I think it's been moved to sometime in February now. I believe is the official date.
Yeah.
I want to say around February 20th or something like that. I believe that's about right. I know it was moved back to sometime in February, I believe. Originally it was going to be in January, but I think they landed another interview or two. I don't know.
Hey, the more the merrier.
The more the merrier, yeah.
So in the last few months or so, I've interviewed both Val Story and Larry Coral. Would you tell me a little bit about the Monday residence you guys have here at the station?
This is something that Val kind of come up with the idea for this, and when we first started doing it, I honestly didn't think I would want to do it every Monday night, and we started out doing it every other Monday night. We started out early on just deciding, we didn't want to do it every week. Maybe we do it every couple of weeks, and it got popular pretty quick, and people started going, man, you need to do this every week. And so it was pretty easy to talk me into it because it was so much fun. It was such a wonderful band. You got Doug Jernigan on steel guitar and Catherine Marks on keyboards, Mike Bubb on bass, Larry Adamanyuk playing drums, and I play guitar, Larry plays guitar, and me and Larry and Val Story do all the vocals, and Aubrey Haney plays fiddle with us. It's a fun group.
Oh yeah.
We're pretty diverse in our repertoire.
Yeah.
We play a lot of different stuff.
Right.
And that's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
To be able to just pretty much do whatever song we want to do.
I wanted to talk about the producer side of Carl Jackson.
Sure.
Could you tell me a little bit about the Orthophonic Joy album?
Sure. That was such a fun project. Another kind of labor of love because we all were influenced by those Bristol sessions. Those songs and those performances. The big bang of country music. Made an impact on all of us. So when I had the opportunity to do that, I was honored that I was asked to do it, and to be able to get so many wonderful artists to come in and take part of it. That means the world when you can, you pick up the phone and somebody like, Vince Gill or Dolly, somebody get there, yeah, man, you're doing it, okay, yeah. I mean, that means the world to you. You kind of work really hard over a lot of years to try to get that, hopefully get that reputation. If you're kind of in charge of something that they know, they have confidence that you're going to do everything you can to make it really good and make it the best it can be, and that's nice to hear when people say that. Oh, Carl's doing okay.
Yeah.
That means the world to you. And that project, I don't know how many it sold. I guess it's done all right. I think a lot more people would have it if they knew about it.
Right.
It was, never had any singles or anything like that. So sometimes albums like that, it's hard for people to learn about them, But the cool thing about that is gradually they go over time. You know, more and
Yeah.
more people discover it.
Right.
And it's kind of
Yeah.
a long view thing rather
Yeah.
than just a short term, big hit and gone. You know,
Yeah.
kind of like the Mark Twain record that I did the same way. It's another
Yeah.
one of those multi-artist albums that tells the life story of Mark Twain. And I have people tell me all the time, "Oh man, we use that to teach classes on Mark Twain, and we do this and that. Man, that song on there, and wow, how'd you get all those people on there, and how'd you get Clint Eastwood on there, and how'd you get, Garrison Keillor to narrate it, and Jimmy Buffett, and all these different people?" And it's like, well, you have to ask them.
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
and again, so many of them came through.
Yeah.
Helped me out.
Well, I was lucky enough to learn about both of those albums when they first come out. When Orthophonic Joy first came out, I guess that was one of the first times I ever saw you. Was at Houston Fest.
Yeah.
You did a showcase there. I guess it was with the Church Sisters.
The Church Sisters
Yeah.
were there. Yeah, Marty Stewart was there.
Yeah.
Steep Canyon Rangers were there.
Chuck Wagon Gang.
Chuck Wagon Gang,
Yeah.
Ashley and Shannon Campbell were there. It was that was a fun show to do, man. And I hope it came off well. We didn't have a lot of time to rehearse or anything, but
Yeah.
people seemed to like it.
Oh yeah,
it
it was fantastic.
That was so many great songs came out of those Bristol sessions, and to be able to do them, and to put just a little different spin on all of them. I didn't
Right.
try to copy the original records or anything. Just wanted to wanted to honor those sessions, but
Right.
kind of more up to date versions, but still very acoustic and
Right.
very,
Yeah.
riding that line of original and new.
Yeah.
So
Would you tell me a little bit more about how the Mark Twain album came about?
the Mark Twain album came about by there's a girl named Cindy Lovell. I had not heard from Cindy Lovell since the Jim and Jesse days. We actually wrote letters back and forth to each other when I was with Jim and Jesse. She was 3 or 4 years younger than me. I can't remember. But anyway, we were kind of pen pals back then. And I get a call one day at my home and pick up the phone, and this voice says, "Hello, is this Carl?" I said, "Yeah, this is Carl." She said, "Well, this is Cindy Lovell. I used to be Cindy Pletcher. Do you remember me?" And I said, "Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Still got your letters." And so we got to talking, and she said, "Well, I'm now the director of the Mark Twain Museum up in Hannibal, Missouri." And she said the date for the 100-year anniversary of Mark Twain's passing is coming up. And she said, "Would you be interested in doing a record to honor him and to honor that, tell his life story?" She was a big fan of a record I'd done called Living, Loving, Losing, Songs of the Louvin Brothers. And she said that was her favorite record. And she said she wanted to know if I would do a record to honor Mark Twain that was kind of along the same lines, but maybe, a little different. And I'm like, yeah, I love Mark Twain. I think that'd be great. And so we started talking about it, started looking for songs, throwing ideas back and forth, started talking about the fact to make it different, we wanted narration in it. We actually wanted to tell the story, then song, story. And we started throwing names about who we'd like to get to narrate and all that. And it all came together.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be, it's a project that I still can enjoy listening to it myself, because it tells the complete life story of Mark Twain in words and music, and another labor of love. Man, I worked on an album for 2 years probably, but I wanted to. That's that Jim Rushing thing. I wanted to get it right, you know.
Yeah. So. Would you tell me a little bit more about the Livin', Lovin', Losing album?
Oh yeah. Well, that came about. Kathy Louvin is our Louvin's daughter. She called me one morning at the house, and she said, "Carl, what do you think, or how do you think a tribute album to Dad and Charlie would be received?" And I said, "Oh gosh, there were so many great songs. I think people would absolutely love it." I said, "The only thing we have to do is come up with a home for it, and the funds to do it right. Any project that you take on like that, you can't. I don't want to half do them. I want to do it right. I want to make sure I have enough budget to do it right, and to be able to, treat all the artists the right way, and make sure that you don't want to do something like that and just it not have every T crossed and every I dotted, So we were able to find funding for it, and I went in the studio, started lining up people, started asking people to do it. It originally was going to be, believe it or not, it originally was going to be on Sugar Hill Records. And the day before I went in the studio, I get a call from a lawyer out in California, and they said, "You got to shut down the sessions tomorrow. We don't have all the release forms signed." And I'm like, "I'm not shutting down anything. These are my friends. I mean,
Right.
I've already booked them. I'm not gonna shut it down." "Well, we just can't. We can't do it." And I said, "Okay, whatever." So I went in and I just paid for it myself, and then I took it to Universal. And Universal, I got kind of aggravated. I mean, I love a lot of people at Sugar Hill, and still do, but I was a little aggravated with that lawyer,
Right.
So I just took it over to Universal and played them a few things off of it, and they're like, "We'd like to have it." Okay.
Yeah.
So and that worked out pretty good. They put the record out, and it actually did really well. Sold quite a few albums and won a couple of Grammys. That was nice.
So I'm gonna play the song you sang with Linda Ronstadt on there.
Yeah, man, that was fun. That was one of the biggest thrills of my life, and I hope it doesn't sound like bragging, because I don't do that, and I don't want it to sound like that. But
Oh, no.
I called Linda when I was doing that album, and I called her up and I said, "Linda, would you consider being part of a Louvin Brothers tribute project with me? I'd love to have you on it." I had worked with her and Dolly and Emmy on the second trio record. So.
Right.
And I'd also done a tour with her, and she said, "Yeah." She said, I'd love to do it. I love the Louvin Brothers, and I'd love to do it." She said, "But I only do it under one condition." And I said, "Well, what's that?" And she said, "That I sing with you." And man, I'm sorry if that sounds wrong, but when Linda Ronstadt tells you she'll do something if she can sing with you,
Better
well, that
sing.
just about made my life right there, because
Yeah.
man, there's never been a better singer than Linda Ronstadt.
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
her and Glenn Campbell are just, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
just awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome singers. So that meant the world to me.
So that album won a few Grammys, but your first Grammy came with Spring Training.
It did. First Grammy came for an album with John Starling and the Nash Ramblers called Spring Training. And I remember that too. John and I had gone up and done a show up. I guess we'd done Prairie Home Companion, maybe. Either that or something, our own stage. We did some show in Minnesota or somewhere, I don't know. And on that trip, we got to sing together a good bit. John had heard a bunch of demos I'd done here, and he wanted to know who was producing these demos. He's like, "Man, these sound like records," and Jim Rushing told me, "Oh, it's Carl. He's producing these things." So John called me and wanted me to go do a couple of gigs with him, and so I did, and we really enjoyed singing together. And we got to talk about it. So, man, let's do a record. And I remember this is going to sound crazy, but it's true. We were sitting at a place called the Cooker. It was there were two of them here in Nashville that I know of at the time. There was one called the West End Cooker, and then there was the Rivergate Cooker. John and I were sitting at the Rivergate Cooker out in Hendersonville, and we were talking, and we just made the decision we were going to do this record, and I said, let's do it. But if we do it, I said, let's win a Grammy. I literally said that, and John was like, "Yeah, let's do," like, "Yeah, right."
Right.
Well, we do the record, and doggone, it gets nominated for a Grammy, and doggone it wins, It's like, so there you go. Maybe you just got to say it sometimes, I don't know.
Say it going into it.
Yeah.
Do you remember where you were when you first heard that you won?
I do, because I was there.
You were at the Grammys.
I was at the Grammys. Yeah, John and I went to the Grammys together, and of course that particular, the Grammys, they have 50 or 60 Grammys that they give out every day, and there's only about 10 or 12 they give out on TV. So naturally, the Bluegrass album was not on TV. Okay, it was in the early ceremonies before the show starts. They're still very nice. You still got the tuxes on, the whole bit. But I remember right where we were. That year it was in New York, and John and I and Jay Starling, his son, and a friend of mine named Norman Harris. We went up there. I remember Lynn was working at Miss North Carolina. She couldn't go with me that time. We were together at the time, and she couldn't go. So my buddy Norman Harris went up there with me, and we were out in the audience, and they announced Spring Training as the winner. And I went up on stage and accepted it. And the whole deal. Same thing happened with the Louvin Brother record when it won. out in L.A. It was in the earlier ceremonies, previously awarded, But I went up and received them, and that was, it's a huge. People tell you it's a huge honor to be nominated. It is, but it is better to win. I gotta say it is. I'm pulling for my buddy Jerry Salley. He's nominated this year, and I'm like going, man, I hope you win. I really hope he does, because there's nothing like it, man. It's just it's to know that people in the industry voted for you. It's not just a fan award. It's people they hopefully take into consideration the sound of the album and the quality of the songs, and it's the big picture. It's kind of like it's kind of like the Oscar of the music world. So it means a lot.
So there's a song on the Spring Training album that you wrote with Mabel Montgomery called "I'm Not Over You." Is that the first time that it was recorded?
Let me think about this. I believe that is the first time it was recorded. I believe that's before Rhonda recorded it. I think she recorded it not too long after that, if I remember right. But John and I wanted to do that song on there. I love Melba, first of all. And it's a big honor and big thrill that we wrote that song together. And then and after that record, now it's kind of become another one of those standard things for Rhonda. Rhonda's recorded it 3 or 4 different times. I mean, she's had a big hit on that song, and that's and Lord knows she kills it. Man, she can sing it.
Oh yeah,
just wears it out. She's one of the finest singers ever too.
So what's the story behind that song?
That one was just a title. Believe it or not, every now and then there's just a title. We had this title called "I'm Not Over You," and I'm going under because I'm not over you. And it was just something me and Melba sat there and wrote together. She's a big influence because she's such a great country singer too, and such a classic country singer.
Oh yeah.
So to have her sitting over there, singing back lines to me, that's good influence.
Is there any new music in the works you can tell me about?
I got a couple of things that I need to do. Yes, I don't have anything right on the immediate, like the immediate horizon. They're kind of still. It's kind of still dark. It's not quite getting daylight on the sun rising on those yet, but I have plans. Yes, to do some more things. Quite a few more things, but not right at the moment. Don't have anything coming out right this minute. Just kind of been got married in December of 17, and we started a house project, or building onto our house, and that's been a nightmare. So be careful, folks, of who you hire. But anyway, quite honestly, my music has taken a bit of a back seat in the last year and a half or so, because I've just been kind of wore out with that, but I'm not stopping. I still got all kinds of things going through my head, and songs going through my head, and things picked out to do, and records, projects to do that are kind of on the table. Hey, when you get ready to do them, here, let's do it. But I can't really talk about them at the moment.
Right. That's all right. Well, I guess that's about all I have for you today, Carl.
Well, buddy, I'm enjoyed it.
I appreciate you so much. But I always end every radio show I do with a gospel song. And today I wanted to end the show with a performance I found of you doing a song you wrote called "In His Hands."
Oh, thank you.
Would you tell me about that song?
Absolutely, I'll tell you about it. I had a dear friend of mine who's passed away now, a lady from down in Mississippi, Miss Evelyn Bobo. Her and her husband, Van Bobo, were dear friends of my mom and dad, and dear friends of mine. She sent me an email one day that it told this story about how, like a paintbrush in my hands or your hands or the average person's hands, just it's kind of, it's not really worth a lot. But now you put that paintbrush in the hands of Michelangelo, it's worth a lot. And I was a pretty good baseball player, but you put a baseball bat in my hands, and it's pretty good. But you put it in the hands of Mickey Mantle, Hank Aaron, Willie Mays. It's a little different. It's a little bit bigger money maker. You know what I mean? So it gave me an idea for this song, and I couldn't. I've never seen one written, with that particular subject, but I decided that email gave me the idea for the song. I didn't use Michelangelo or anything, but then I evolved it in the hands of Jesus, the nails in his hands.
Yeah.
Which made a huge difference for all of us.
Right.
Saved us all.
Right.
And so I'm proud of that song.
Yeah.
Proud of that song.
Yeah.
And I'm proud that you found it.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you so much, Carl. To keep up with Carl Jackson, visit carljackson.net, like Carl Jackson fans on Facebook, and come to the Station Inn every Monday night at 9 p.m.
Come on down. We'll have a big time.
Well, thanks so much, Carl.
You're so welcome.
Let's go sing some country music.
Let's do it. All right.